Well, our recording is in progress, as the voice tells me, and it's a good thing. It's a fine morning, and Pat McCart is just pawing the turf, as they say, in as distinct from cutting the turf in Donegal. How are you this morning, Pat? It's a great day here.
I'm granted, you're dead, mate. It's a lovely morning here. Now yesterday, what was it? Only about 10 degrees, but the sun shone, so it was nice. Like, it was actually a cold one day, but geez, Jude, when you see the sunshine, it cheers you up no end.
Have you still got a cold wind there, Pat? Is that cold wind still?
Jude, it was definitely cold yesterday. In fact, I noticed
Yesterday,
that.
but today
I
I'm
think
talking about.
no, it's not too bad today. No,
Uh,
yesterday, in fact, I went out, had a t-shirt on, and I went out, and geez, I had to come back in and put on a jumper. It was actually quite cold.
yes, it was very deceptive because when you looked out the window, the countryside was bathed in sunshine, and the trees have flowered, and the flowers are out. Then you go out, my
Uh,
God, you say skin you alive.
exactly.
Anyway, better days
Anyway,
ahead, Pat. Right. What I'm going to do today, what we are going to do today, here are the headlines, as they say on the best news programs. Firstly, we'll be looking at US campuses and what's going on there. Very important. Second, and this is one that I know Pat takes to with relish, sex education. The third one, which he also takes to, is the position of journalists in the South and the changes there. And maybe finally, anti-immigration demonstrations and a new twist to that. Okay, so let's start with the US campuses. And somebody that I read said, we're almost back in 1968.
yeah.
Do you, Pat, there's an awful lot of unrest on campuses from the East Coast to the West Coast of America. Are you welcoming of that? Or what are they protesting about? Or what's the whole situation?
Totally welcome, Jude. I'm amazed. There seems to be this universality in America and from the establishment that they're all pro-Israel. There's very little shakedown from either the Democrats or the Republicans. They all seem to be singing from the one hymn sheet. There's very, very few dissenting voices, and I'm going, there's something not right about that. Dude, we've been down this road before, but there's almost the total destruction of Gaza. We're watching genocide almost on air, and there's this silence coming from the American establishment. In fact, it's sort of saying Israel should be allowed to go finish the job, etc., etc. Now, this is at the time when there's now about 35,000 people dead, approximately 80,000 wounded. Gaza is obliterated, and you're going, wait a minute, what's going on here? And there seemed to be very little sort of condemnation or any sort of reaction from the public. And now suddenly in Columbia, it started at Columbia University.
Hmm.
I think there was 100 students arrested. The sit-in's been going on for 10 days, and it's now spread right across America, the campuses. And Jude, I'm delighted to see it. There's something seriously wrong, Jude, that we all sit back and watch this. And you're right. See, about 68, the Vietnam War, it started on the college campuses. And the turning point on the American thing about it was the Kent State, where the National Guard shot dead 4 students. Now
Hmm.
it's starting in America now. I am so glad to see it. Jude, there's something seriously, seriously wrong. And in fact, I think it's amoral and immoral what's happening in America. They're
Yeah.
supplying weapons to a right-wing fascist group in Israel who are bombing and murdering using snipers, attacking hospitals, attacking refugee centers, and so on. And it was all going so quietly. And and is that almost? And what it gets me is if Russia was doing this, if China was doing this, the hypocrisy, the double standards, the condemnation would be absolutely roaring. The shitstorm and would be in the media
Yeah.
about the barbaric nature of it. America's
Yeah.
doing it, supporting Israel, nothing.
Yeah, I'm filled with hope actually, because I do believe that during the 60s and the 70s, as they called it, the student unrest on campus, the big
Yeah,
demonstrations that they had, uh, was vital actually in telling Americans, this war you're involved in over in Vietnam may not be as simple as their government is presenting it as. More power to the wheel, I say. I see where the University of Southern California has now had to postpone its graduation ceremonies
Yeah,
because
yeah.
of that. The students have locked themselves into places on the campus, and the administration are negotiating with them. I think that's great. I think there's one problem, though, and I don't know how they're going to solve this. The fact is that there are a fair smattering of Jewish students on these campuses. And some of these Jewish
Yeah.
students, not all, because some of them might be totally in support of demonstration, but some of them are saying this is anti-Semitic. This is whipping up anti-Semite propaganda, and it's making us feel fearful. We're feeling insecure and fearful from what our fellow students may do to us. Do you think, are they right to say that, or is it just another attempt to try to divert from evil?
You know, I've no sympathy for this anti-Semite charge. Has now it's been overfed. It's been used every which way, Jude. Every legitimate criticism of Israeli acts. Jude, is it anti-Semitism to say 35,000 people dead who are corralled into a 2.2 mile radius with the Israelis allowed to drop the bombs on them, drop shells on them, allowed to cut off their water, their food, their electricity? To call that to say that is wrong. Oh, you're an anti-Semite. Give us a break, dude. That is ridiculous.
Yes.
And you know, every protest is anti-Semite. Even the guy last week, Gideon, whatever you call him, the guy in London who arranged to have a confrontation on last
Oh,
Saturday with
yes.
the Met
Yeah.
Police. You know, he said it was anti-Semitic when the cops wouldn't let him cross the road. Dude, it's a weapon. Anti-Semitism has been weaponized and to favor the Jewish population, to say all attacks on them are anti-Semitism when it's and clearly, Jude, I'm talking about humanity, not anti-Semitism.
Yeah. Well, you see, the thing is this, Pat, I agree completely. I think that this a tendency for people to say, oh, you've criticized Israel, so you must hate Jews. I mean,
Aye,
that's
that's
nonsense. But,
bollocks.
but, Pat, but supposing you were a Jew, a Jewish student on an American campus, and you saw guys out there with addressing hundreds of your fellow students and telling of the ghastly things that Israeli army had done, it'd be hard not to feel a little bit ill at ease, and it'd be hard not to feel maybe I shouldn't go to that part of the campus because they might just decide here's somebody is supporting because he's Jewish, he must be supporting Israel. I can sort of understand their disease.
Yeah,
Unease, rather,
Jude,
not their
hold on,
disease, their
right?
unease.
Unease, aye. But say it's right. Say tomorrow morning, Ireland was bombing. Well, let's say Isle of Man,
Yeah.
and the people on Isle of Man couldn't get out, and we had killed um 35,000. We had injured 80,000. We had cut off their water, their food, their electricity, etc., etc., etc. Like, if I'm an Irish guy somewhere in England and there's protests, like, I think my feeling of unease as on the Halfpenny Place compared to protests about what the Irish would be doing on the Isle of Man. Hard cheese.
Well, yes, I take a point there too. Yeah, they're suffering nervousness and maybe fearful, a little bit fearful, and they might have to keep their heads down low. But
For a
as
couple
you
of weeks.
say, which would you rather have, be in that
Yeah,
situation or be in Gaza with bombs raining down on you?
exactly.
Um,
Which is the greater evil?
yeah, but at the same time, it's a little bit of a worry, and I think what if the students were smart, they would get those Jewish students who support what they're doing, put them in front of the microphone and get them to say what their views are to break this damned attempt to connect the state of Israel with Jewish people.
Yeah.
That's it seems to me the weak link in the
Jenny,
protest.
what do you call it? I'm not sure whether it was Yale or Columbia. I'm not sure, but there
Yeah.
was one of the groups that were banned by the president of the college was Jewish Voices for Peace. Imagine they actually banned Jewish people from supporting the Palestinian marches, or the pro-Palestinian marches. You go, wait a minute, this is crazy. Jude, I've been watching a wee bit on social media. an ex formerly known as Twitter, Mike Pompeo, who's the former Secretary of State. Jude, if you read some of his stuff, it's absolutely insane. There's this, it's like Ian Paisley back in the 1960s. Is this, the second coming of Jesus Christ, and we should stand with Israel because of the Bible, what the Bible says now. And Jude, I never realized how insane some of the American politicians are. There's this biblical thing, and it's very, very dangerous. I think political decisions should be based on politics. Religion should be based on religion, and neither the twain shall meet or
I
mix.
I couldn't agree more, because Pat, it's a very dangerous thing, as you say.
Yeah,
If you start saying God said this,
yeah,
and really this is the way it should be, then we must fight against these people because they're anti-God. You're introducing into the mainstream argument. You're introducing this idea of a religious war. Like it's
yeah,
almost like a bloody crusades over again. Um,
yeah.
it's a particularly nasty one that I do think that the US students would be wise to think about ways of highlighting this fact that they are not objecting to Jewish people. They're objecting to the way the state of Israel is acting. And they should do that by having forefronting those Jewish students who are, I'm sure there's plenty of them, who would speak up and say, this is a lot of rubbish. How dare you say that I'm in favor of slaughter of people simply because I'm
Apparently, a
Jewish?
lot of one of the things they said, and I have read it several places, that young American Jews have become very disenchanted with Israel, and it's the values of Netanyahu and the far right, and some of the absolute rhetoric that's coming out of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv
Mm.
is unbelievable, and they don't want to be associated with it at all. Now, uh, what's the as you say, it would be really, really unfortunate if those liberal people who say, "Wait a minute, they don't speak for us," now have to keep their head down, and in fact, would this maybe, as you say, maybe feeling the fear of coming out and saying I'm a Jew, maybe might turn them other way. That this is what our parents went through. So
Yeah.
that would be a big loss for the whole thing.
Yeah, it would. But then again, they might look to the 60s, and there were several, as I remember it, there were several Jewish students who were very vocal against the administration and against the
Yeah,
Vietnam War.
very much so. Yeah, yeah.
What was the guy's name? Was it one of the Chicago Eight? Was it Jerry Rubin or something like that?
Was he Jerry Rubin, was it Jerry Rubinstein? I can't remember. Jerry Rubin
Uh,
one. He was he all that beat poets and Grateful Dead and all that sort of stuff.
I think the highlight of that was, and we shouldn't dwell on this, but the highlight of that was where the judge was driven to such a state that he had to have one of the Chicago Eight. He had to have him tied down, strapped into his chair, and I think even a gag over his mouth to stop him
Uh,
shouting stuff. Those
uh,
are the days. Anyway, I am
uh,
delighted to hear that about the students in America, and more power to the wee wheel. It's good that somebody's speaking out. And what the hell is
uh,
Ireland doing that we haven't been speaking out ages ago? I know we've got Micheál Martin going and saying, yeah, we're going to lodge a petition against what the Israelis are doing in Gaza. But I mean, you took your time, Micheál. You took your
I,
bloody time.
Now I have to say, Michal this week was very, very good and very,
Ah,
very
it's good.
strong.
Yeah, I agree.
But it took him a long time.
Ah.
Did he have to wait till 34,000 people were dead?
That's right. That's what gets my wick. There's no point in being morally indignant if, in fact, you've stood by and watched people die.
Uh,
Okay,
uh,
let's move to another topic, which is still with education, but it's actually sex education. So this could be fun. Uh,
uh,
as you know, there's a mandatory unit being put in place for all of the schools, I think, in the north, where they're going to have to teach sex education, and that will include trans people, or the whole question of
uh,
trans, all the
Transgender.
modern same-sex marriage, the whole thing. Now, there's
Yeah.
an irony here, because they didn't have to take it. In fact, it was expected they wouldn't take it, but the DUP made a point of taking the educational portfolio when it came to distributing the goodies at the beginning. So it's that Paul Given, is it? That is the
Yeah, he's the Minister for Education. Yeah, yeah.
he's the guy that pulled the little bit of money was going to students to go to the Guild Tax. Do you remember that just before
Yeah,
Christmas?
yeah, the famous one. Yeah,
And
yeah.
then he said, "Happy Christmas." Jeez.
Uh, yeah,
Well,
50,000 for the. Jude, it's an interesting one because there was an understanding, my understanding that between Sinn Féin and the DUP, that the DUP would go for the finance, the
yeah,
cabinet post portfolio. And on the day of remember the Saturday, there was some sort of a bit of a sort of what's going on here, that the DUP went for education and left finance for Sinn Féin and Mr. Connor Murphy.
yeah.
Anyway,
Sinn Féin actually stopped they stopped the
they
proceedings
stopped
because
it.
we
They stopped
want.
the meeting for several minutes. They said, "Wait a minute, that's just not our understanding." In fact, a lot of people are going, "What's going on here? What's the game? What's the strategy here?" And it now looks like the DUP wanted this for this very reason. A sex thing is, this is a bit of a culture war, Jude, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because now,
of course, classic.
like, there's two or three things going on. Right, Gavin Robinson is the current leader of the DUP, but he's a wee bit vulnerable and he's seat in East Belfast.
Yep.
Naomi Long won it before. And
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of young people growing up in Northern Ireland, not like the people of our generation, who are very much the DEP. A lot of this biblical stuff, they you know, they you know, they don't have a lot of time for it. Naomi, so Gavin Robinson and it looks like Alliance is up for this fight. They're saying we want this sex education thing introduced. It's compulsory, and they look like they're up for the fight.
Yeah,
And I presume they see some sort of benefit from them, that they're able to portray the DUP as this sort of church-led, biblical, and the modern day alliance voter, and and Belfast and North Down and all the rest will come to the aid of the party. Now the Alliance Party are stuck where about 13% in the vote.
that's right.
Maybe they see some votes in this, dude. That
Yeah, did you?
a lot of young married couples will be saying, because that will be affecting the people around about the 30 age group who there's children are 7 or 8 or 9 or whatever it is. Maybe
Yeah.
35.
Well, that's
It won't
one
be
way of
affecting the
looking.
70-year-olds.
That's one way of looking at it, Pat. But I think the DEP are looking at it differently. I think they think that they took the education portfolio, and I think they saw this coming, and they maybe think that people who are, if you like, have edged their way from DEP into the arms of the Alliance, that when they see this sex education thing, and where parents, so I mean, Paul Given is giving out about this, that their parents should be the ones who should decide whether the kids attend these classes or not. Whenever some of these people who would be alliance inclined but are actually in the DP camp at present, when they hear this kind of talk, they'll simply say, these guys are irredeemable, and they'll go back into the fold for both ways, actually. On the one hand, it'll
Yeah.
split people who really want to have a secular state and have these things, teaching kids what the facts of life are. And this old style thing where we're saying, oh, no, we've got to leave it to the parents and we don't talk about those things, and there's a danger you might encourage them and so on. So it could have political repercussions, but not the ones that the DUP are hoping for. Have I made myself
Uh,
obscure?
I'm not sure what exactly the point you're making, but
Well,
I think Given said it would be undemocratic to vote against the parents or to go against parents' wishes. And I think it was the Paul Buckley. I think he said, "Let kids be kids," and all the rest of it. But
yeah.
like, Jude,
What do you think yourself,
I
Pat? Do
think,
you not think there's some truth in that?
well, yeah, Jude. I think this whole thing about sex education and all the rest is as a double-edged sword. You don't want children to be ignorant of what's going on in the world, and being in danger of, and not because of ignorance. But then you don't want them to be, as Buckley says, I believe in the idea, let kids be kids and not worry about all this sort of stuff. But anyway, Jude, the bottom line of it all is, right, we're now sort of, the Catholics are a minority and the Unionists are a minority. The Alliance Party's got this 13%. I would sort of wonder, Jude, how many people, maybe who vote Alliance and all the rest, or should say, when they sit and watch the DUP and say, "Wait a minute, this,
Mm.
we're going to, put all this behind." Could a whole lot of the people who are sort of middle of the road say, "Right, hey, I'm going to vote Alliance and the DUP to go further down"?
But if you see, I agree. That's a good point, Pat, and I think that point is made in the article in the Irish Times this morning. But there is the possibility of seeing it the other way, like you've just said, that you'd be, while you'd not want to have kids blinded to or not told about the facts of life, they have to, you've got to educate them and let them know what the world is like and what the human body is like. On the
Yeah,
other hand, you don't like you'd have some sympathy with the slogan "Let kids be kids."
kids,
So
yeah,
maybe you
yeah.
see it could work the other way. Instead of the ranks of the Alliance Party being formed up, there might be people who are sympathetic to Alliance and are saying, "No, at the end of the day, I'm with what that guy is saying, what Paul Given is
Yeah,
saying."
in fairness, Jude, you could probably look at it both ways. But I have an idea. I get the impression, Jude, I don't know a massive amount of young Protestant or Unionist young people, but I've met a few. And the days of the old biblical, bashing guys, there a lot of them now are sort of they've always put religion
And
behind
that's
them,
true,
and
Pat.
it's
That's
like the
true.
same as
But we're
like
not talking.
a lot of young Catholics as well.
But we're not talking about that. That's true that those are those days are gone, both for Catholics and Protestants. But you're saying that if you were in that position, you would really, in the end, want to have the control in the hands of the parents, because while you'd be in favor of sex education, you might be in favor of the kind of sex education that they're going to be handed out, and it might, kids are a bit confused. I tell you the truth, I worry about that too.
Yeah,
I don't know if kids there's an issue for, but if you lay out these things, is there not a
yeah.
danger that it'll, as they say, put ideas in their head?
Yeah, Judy, I don't know, but I definitely think, obviously the DUP have made some sort of decision that this is a cultural war they can win,
Hmm.
because it looks like they deliberately went for this. But they've miscalculated quite a few other things, and I wonder, have they miscalculated in this one as well?
I think they have, actually. I think they have, but at the same time, all I'm saying is that I almost have some sympathy for them, because in ways I can
Yeah,
understand the point they're making. Uh, Although they're probably a bit too rigid about it. What they should be
yeah,
doing is looking at the sex education curriculum, see what it says, what it covers, and then make a decision about that. I'd
yeah.
rather that Paul Given or anybody else would quote me chapter
You
and
said
verse.
earlier on that it was mandatory or that it's compulsory.
That's what I
Well,
understand.
right, how much choice is there if it's
Well,
mandatory?
that's the thing. You see, I think they're saying that we can't have this. Whereas, as I understand it from the Alliance people, it's the curriculum and the curriculum. And I think whereas in previous days, what would happen was kids wouldn't, if their parents wanted, they'd be removed from that. Like
Yeah.
for example, Protestant kids who went to Catholic schools, and there were quite a number. When it
No,
came time for religious education, those kids would sit out. They would just not engage in it, and that was fine. I'm not
but
sure that that's the
that's
case with
that's
this.
but hold on, that's not comparing like what's like. If it's mandatory, it doesn't matter whether
Well,
you're
that's right.
Catholic,
That's my
Protestant, or
point. Yeah,
yeah,
that's my point,
yeah,
Pat. That was optional.
yeah,
I get the
yeah.
impression this isn't optional. Now,
No, as far
maybe
if
I'll
I
check it up
remember
for.
reading it, it said it
I,
was
I'll,
compulsory.
I'll check it up for next week, because if it is
Yeah,
compulsory, boy, I'll tell you, the DUP is a problem. They really have a
yeah,
problem. Yeah. Okay, let's move to a noble profession. I mean, there are
yeah,
people who work. There is such a thing as sex workers, but there's also such a thing as journalist workers. My
yeah.
goodness, you're one yourself. Only you are now reformed.
Uh,
You're an ex
uh,
journalist worker. And
uh,
journalists are in the headlines in a way. Certainly, there's an article by, I think it is Justine McCarthy, is it? Um,
yeah.
in the Irish Times today. Tell us about it, Pat, and tell us what you think yourself.
Uh,
Because I think it's turning up
it's
here
actually a
as
very
well.
good article. But by the way, I have a friend, so I need to be careful here. I have a friend who actually recently
You have a
joined Charlie
friend.
McConlogue as
Did you say you had a friend, Pat?
I had a friend, yeah,
You have a friend. I doubt
a
that. I doubt
former
if you have
colleague,
a friend.
I have a former colleague who's joined Charlie McConlogue, the Minister for Agriculture and the Marine, as a
Right.
special advisor. Right,
Hmm.
Justin McCarthy says that in recent times, she says, she says she told the story that one day there was a leaving do, and they get and this guy, he told her, look, stop looking to uh, sort of point a stick at the hornet's nest. No, the way to get on in journalism is join the consensus, and all the rest of it. And she says she thought it was soul destroying if that's the way you looked at life. But she says now it seems that a hell of a lot of journalists are going over to the government benches
Uh-huh.
to act as spin doctors
Going over
and
to
so
the
on. And
dark
she and
side.
and the dark side. And she laments it very much. She says it's not what she understood journalism to be about, etc., etc. But she also accepts journalism these days is not particularly well paid. And if you get a government job as a press advisor or an advisor to the minister, you're on maybe 80,000 or 90,000. That's lovely money. And she can understand if maybe you're in your mid 30s and you have kids heading off, and 17 or 8-year-old daughter or son, and they're heading off to university. It's a very attractive. But she says, and this is the main point, Jude. She says, we're living in an age of misinformation and, like Trump and, all the rest of it. And she says, now, it says these ministers are taking on these guys, and now suddenly they're in the lobby group and they're sitting talking to former colleagues, and they're often, she says, they mightn't be doing anything illegal, but they know how the game works. Say the minister's under pressure, what they'll do is to divert the story, they'll give another guy a story about, hey, did you hear about Jude Collins, right? And then the next thing they're off, and then they'll be sort of briefing, sort of, they're not doing anything illegal, but she says basically they're spinning in a way to take the heat off, and they know
Yeah.
all the tricks. And she says that is bad for democracy. And she says there was even a case, she says, a couple of years back, which is extremely well-known journalist went off on holidays with a well-known politician. She says, how can that be holding power to account when the fox is running with the hound?
I mean, that last point, Pat, is it doesn't really fit into the pattern. If the guy is
No.
a journalist, I think he should keep at arm's length the
Yeah.
people that he's writing about. And I must say, when I used to have my column in the Irish News, or even in the whatever the hell they called it, the Daily Ireland, uh,
Yeah.
you get these. I'm sure you know that you get these invites to go to Christmas parties or receptions or whatever from the
Oh,
authorities or from political parties even. So they really what they want to do is to look you in the eyes and become your friend, and then the next time you go back to write a report, it's a wee bit more difficult for you to maybe put the boot into them if they deserve
yeah.
it. But I'll tell you this, Pat. I'm say supposing I was 30 years of age, right?
Yeah.
And I've been in journalism for 3 or 4 years. And I had the opportunity of getting a job as a spin doctor, if you want to call it that, for a
Yeah.
government party. I'd take it. I'd take
Yeah.
it. Now, Justine McCarthy, I think, is making it almost as a moral point, but these are the days we need to stand up to, the lies and so on. I'm not sure. Would I want to be so noble that I would turn my back on a career I think I could be reasonably good at as a spin doctor, or am I to be the sort of knight in shining armor and stay in the ranks of the impoverished journalists?
But did I know, like a young fella I know that's joined, he'd be a fine young fella, and I don't think he would do, and a day's travel would do anything dishonest. Now, but and I know Charlie McConnell as well. I can state fact he's a genuinely decent human being. So, like, you can over egg these things, but she does have a point, right, Jude? We are living in an age of misinformation. The Russians have spent years disseminating, these stuff that they're trying to um, mess up elections in places like
That's
America
true.
and so on.
That's true.
There's no doubt about that.
But
And we have also the homegrown hate mongers out there and so on, and we've got the conspiracy theorists. Even there, quite recently, I saw a thing up about how do you call it, the vaccines again, and so on.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
just what and the one thing a good journalist should be able to go out and check the facts and without fear of favor, I know hold power to account and so on. But Jude, the point she's making is it seems now a hell of a lot of of journalists are opting for the easier life, etc., etc. But then, Jude, look at what's happening. The newspaper trade is dying. There are less and less jobs out there.
Mhm.
So it's all very well to talk about noble aspirations, but if you're a journalist and you say, "Wait a minute, no, the food on the table on a Friday afternoon is far more important than, oh, I must make out that some TD was fiddling his expenses." And if
Mhm.
I print that story, the chances of me getting a job somewhere. So, Jude, there's a reality check comes in,
Ah,
and a lot of people mightn't like it, but what do you do?
yeah. Yeah, but you see, I think that's the divisions that Justin McCarthy is
Yeah,
drawing is a wee bit too stark for my taste.
yeah,
On the one hand, she's saying the people staying in as journalists are the good guys, essentially, and
yeah,
the sort of the bad guys are the ones who go become spin doctors. Well, first of all, that would suggest that the Irish Times and all the other newspapers in Ireland or UK are
yeah,
filled with noble people who are bent on telling the truth. I don't
yeah,
believe that. I don't believe that. And in fact, if anything, I see, well, I'm certain that for example, that the press in Ireland and the media generally have a bias against Sinn Féin. I heard an example of it yesterday, but I'm not going to now because that'll be a distraction. So I don't think we should see journalism as being a sinless profession. May not be sex
well,
workers, but they're not, knights in shining armor, as I said. On the other hand, if you think about it, politicians are elected by the people. If you can help them, if you can work with them and help them to be more successful in getting their message out, I think that's fair enough. And if that involves,
yeah.
some other issue which is taking up time and you don't want to, if you can lead it away, that's part of your job. I don't see anything too terrible about being an effective spin doctor. That's why I've always sort of liked, I hate to say it, but I kind of like Alistair Campbell. He,
Same here.
he doesn't make any bones about it, and we don't do God and all these different
Yeah.
things, and he's using his talents for the Labour Party of Tony Blair. So
Right, but
you know,
it's not as if the public out there are stupid.
aye, well they are. Some of them
Yeah, like
are. Some of them are.
some are okay, but they always say the story, Jude. A lot of people can sit down and say, wait a minute, that's fun. Jude, one of the first things I remember when I came to Derry first, after I left RT, I came down to Derry, and one of the things I noticed, the people in Derry were so astute politically, they had been tuned in so much. The old saying I used to say, I remember people saying in Dublin, oh, the politicians said this. When I came to Derry, it was much more subtle. People say, "Oh, but he didn't say that." In other words, they had analysed, and I remember thinking that's very clever
Yeah,
because they
yeah,
they were attuned to listening. If a British minister said something, yeah, right, okay, he said that bit, but he didn't say the next bit, and they knew. And people are very sort of tuned in and say, a politician, I might be spun, but the people are not fooled. But like Donald Trump is probably the biggest example of how spin and sort of manipulation of the media. He used Twitter. He never did a major interview with any journalist of account of note. He didn't do meet the press or anything like that. All he did was send everything out, Twitter and press
mm,
release
mm,
and public meetings.
yeah.
So he was never held to account by a journalist, but he got around it. You
Well,
know,
I'm struck by your saying that ability of people in Derry to see what wasn't said. I
yeah,
listened to Talkback yesterday. And on talkback was a guy from the SDLP. Now, I'm not sure. Was his name by any chance Donald something? So anyway, there was an SDLP representative. And he was he was responding to a statement which was played by Donoghue O'Leary, I think, about immigration. And
yeah,
the shitter guy started off by saying, we don't believe in opening borders. And he went on then to say what they did believe in. People should be vetted. They should be,
yeah,
so on. And the SLP guy immediately said this was what was it? A dog whistle. That the
yeah.
use of the word open borders, that was a dog whistle to the people who say, oh God, all our borders, we're going to be engulfed with this wave of
Invaded.
immigrants threatening our women and taking our jobs.
Yeah,
See, I just think that that's something should be, a good spin doctor would come back or get Donoghue O'Leary or whoever it was to come back and really demolish that. Does that sound?
yeah.
Am I being? You see, you can be subtle to a point where you actually are turning an argument into something it wasn't.
Yeah, well, there's a thing on Highland Radio this morning. there was a guy on, and he pointed out, he said, this thing, blaming the other, blaming the asylum seeker, blaming the the what do you call it, refugee. He said there could be 40 incidents up at a court, and there's one guy with a Polish name or
Yeah.
a Syrian name for shoplifting or whatever. And he says that, but the one with the foreign name is the one everybody remembers. There was a lady on, and she said, I'm amazed that she says, there was something like 4,000 cases of reported domestic abuse in the Republic of Ireland reported last year.
Yeah.
She's very, very few of those were asylum seekers or all the rest of it. She says that never gets the publicity. She says we always seem to blame the other one if there's a rape or a murder charge, and it's the one foreign. Again, she says they ignore, or not ignore, but she says it gets far more publicity than the other one. So she says we have to be very careful about the sort of conspiracy theories and the hate
Yeah.
mongers out there.
Yeah.
uh,
We're into our last minute, Pat. And I would just say that I think what is absolutely important is for the truth about refugees to be, or immigrants to be said clearly. That this notion that if you're a young refugee or a young immigrant male, that you're therefore probably going to rape somebody if you get a chance. This idea that they're coming to take our jobs and displace us. Those two things should be nailed by every politician who's worth his salt or her salt.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
absolutely, Jude.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go out and enjoy the sunshine, Pat.
All the best, Jude.
Recharge your batteries.
Right, Jude.
Summer's
See you
coming.
later.
Right, thanks,
Yeah,
Pat.
summer's.
Okay.
Bye, Jude. Bye.
Thanks, Lon.
Good luck. Jude.
Yeah, all the
Good
best.
luck to you.
Right.